Hi, this is Kevin Wilson of the Urban Homesteading School in Powell River on the west coast of Canada. So let's talk about starting seeds. First of all, plants need 4 things in order to grow: light, soil, air and water. So light, that's pretty straightforward. You can see if you've got enough light. You need a bright windowsill, or you need grow lights, or you need some kind of protected area outside. Like even one of those little plastic greenhouses will do if your climate is not too severe. Windowsills are a little bit awkward. It looks like they might be enough sometimes, but what happens is your plants start to grow towards the light. They bend way over towards the light, so you have to keep turning them round. They often will end up a bit leggy, that is, they'll be too long. Let me see if I have one here that will show you that. Yes, these kale plants are a little bit too far away from the light, so you can see how tall and leggy they are compared to these lettuce plants, which were much closer to the light. So you want your plants really good and close, but not close enough for it to heat up and burn them. Grow lights can be expensive if you buy good ones, like the full spectrum ones are very expensive, but you don't actually need those to grow seedlings. You only need those if you're trying to grow fruit and flowers under your lights. If all you need is leaves on your seedlings, then you can use cool white or warm white regular fluorescents, or LEDs, which are now coming down in price to a much more reasonable price. You can see the setup that I've got behind me. That's 3 4-foot LEDs hung over the top of 4 standard trays of seedlings, and that works really well. But if all you're doing is just a little small tray, and then you only need a small grow light over the top of it, and you can get 2-foot long ones, just 1 tube, and they'll do a good job too if you're not growing very many. Soil. The most important thing is that it's weed free, because you know what will happen if it's not. You plant your nice little seeds and lots of things come up. Which are the ones you intended to plant and which are the weeds? So yeah, you want something that is as far as possible weed free. So often that means buying bought soil, because I don't know about your compost, but my compost always has some weeds in it. You can sterilize your own compost, boiling water or baking it in the oven, which makes the most horrendous smell. But really it's easier to buy something just for the fairly small amount you need to grow seeds. I've got 2 different starting soils here. This one here, this is fine coir plus some fine vermiculite plus some worm castings. So I mix that up myself for my seed starting soil for small seeds in small containers. This here is more coarse. It's got what's called sea soil, which is our local commercially made compost from fish scraps and wood waste, which actually turns out to be quite good compost, plus coir plus some perlite, and you can see it's got bigger chunks in it. It's fine for bigger seeds and bigger containers. Anything you use needs to be able to hold water and hold air, and water is obvious. I mean, all of us know that plants need water, right? You want it to hold water, but not so much that everything is sitting in a swamp, because that will drown the roots. Because what the other thing that's supposed to be in your soil as well as water is air, so you need air spaces. That's one of the things that this perlite does, which is basically exploded rock. And in here there's some vermiculite, which is harder to see, and it's just a different kind of exploded rock. Both of them will actually hold water as well as air, but holding air is the primary purpose. Now quite often you will see people say that for seed starting soil it doesn't need to have any plant nutrients in it. You don't need to have any fertilizer in it, because the seeds already have a package of nutrition inside them. And that's perfectly true. When you get seeds coming up like this and making their first true leaves, all of that growth actually comes from the nutrition that's in the seed. But once you get past that seed leaves, cotyledons, and into the first true leaves, which these are just starting to make, then you start to need more nutrition than that seed held. And in that case, you're going to start to want some nutrition in the soil. I prefer to have some nutrition in the soil rather than trying to add it later using liquid fertilizer. So in this fine stuff here, I've got some worm castings in here. The sea soil has plant nutrients in it. You might wonder why I'm using coir here instead of peat. Lots of people still use peat. It's fairly environmentally unfriendly to extract peat from peat bogs. They do not grow back quickly, and there's a good deal of destruction involved. Coir at least is a waste product of coconut production. So while it has come a long way to us, at least it's using a waste product. If you'd rather not use anything like that, that's being carried from a long way away or mined out of the earth, you can actually make your own leaf mold. All you have to do is take leaves in the fall, put them in a container where they're going to stay damp. So I just put them in a garbage bag and throw it in the backyard for 3 years or more. Once you start, you can put one bag in the back and bring one out that's 3 years old, and there's your next bunch of leaf mold. And it actually makes something that looks very like coir or peat. It has this brown fibrous look. There's almost no weed seeds in it because it's leaves, that's all it is. It's not soil, and it holds water really well and totally organic, and you produce it yourself. Reuse the bag every time, and you don't even have to use bought garbage bags. Anytime you buy a bag of perlite or vermiculite or coir or fertilizer or sea soil, they all come in plastic bags, so just reuse those. You'll be able to reuse those for years and years. They're quite thick. So water is pretty straightforward. It's nice to have a source of water close to where you're doing your seed starting, but all you need is a little watering can, carry it back and forth. If you can water from the bottom, that's ideal, because especially when you've got freshly seeded pots, I'll just pull one out here. So you can see, if you've got seeds on the top of the soil like that and you pour water from a watering can onto that, it's going to disturb the seeds and move them around. So if you can stand it in a container, where's one of my trays? That'll do for a tray for now. Stand it in a tray, add water to about 1/4 of an inch above the level of the tray, and then just let it set until all of it is nice and wet. And you can pull it out and let it drain and put it wherever you're going to be having it in it, under the lights or on your windowsill. So trays, I'm just going to move this soil to one side. You want to be able to stand your containers in something, because all your containers need to have holes in the bottom. So the classic thing is what's called a 10-20 tray. They're about 10 inches by 20 inches, hence the name. The plastic cell packs like this are made to go in them, so 12 of these fit in one of these trays, and there's 6 at each, so you get 72 little plants. Different sizes, different numbers of plants in there. But the good thing about it is that it's waterproof, so you can have it sitting on your windowsill or your shelf and the water won't hit your furniture. Other things you can use as trays, you certainly don't have to buy things. One thing about these trays is they come in really thin, skimpy plastic or heavy duty plastic. The cheap ones you buy, it used to be that they would last several years. Nowadays, you buy one of the cheap thin ones, they only last a year. So that's a lot of plastic to be recycling, even if you can. So these heavy duty ones are more like $6 or $7, and they're much thicker, they're much more solid and much stronger, and they'll last you a long time. Even somebody like me that makes heavy use of them is probably going to get 10 years of use out of these. But of course you don't have to buy stuff. This is some takeout container. It came with a meal we had a while ago. So that has a very nice tray on the bottom, and it comes with a nice clear lid of its own too. So you can have your containers, or whatever they are, sat in there, put your nice clear lid on the top until they sprout. You always take it off once they sprout, but while they're sprouting, you want to water it to start with, put it in there, put your clear lid on, and just leave it be. You shouldn't have to water it again with the lid on. That keeps it nice and moist without it getting soggy. Here's another clear lid from a birthday cake, and another take-out food foil container. You can just sit that on there, and there's your clear lid over your waterproof tray. There's a nice small take-out container. That'll take several small pots. It won't take one of these 6-packs. Oh, maybe it will. Not quite. No, the top's not going to fit on. But you can put several small individual pots in there. Here's a spinach container, which had a tear-off lid, so there's no actual solid lid, but you can still put that over the top of other things. So let's just put those to one side. Bringing a 1020 tray back. And here's the clear lid that goes with the 1020 tray. Sits right over the top and fits exactly. Now you'll quite often see kits like this in the store, where you get the tray on the bottom, and the clear tray for the top, and what they usually put in them is little round pucks made out of compressed peat or sometimes coir, which are inside a piece of netting to hold them together. And with those, you soak them with water and let them expand inside their netting. Now, I used to use these occasionally, but I have not done so in years, because what I found was the netting, which is supposed to be biodegradable, it's still in the soil years later. I'm still finding them occasionally now, and I haven't used one of those in 5 or 6 years. So they last a long time in the soil. But what that means is, really, you've got to peel off the netting off the outside before you plant the thing, which is going to damage the roots that are going through the netting, and you end up with all these horrible little pieces of netting. So yeah, unless you have absolutely no alternative, I don't recommend using those. They're also very small. You know, there's no more in them than there is in one of these cells. So that means your plant is going to need to be potted up into a bigger pot, quite likely anyway. If you've got something like a tomato plant that's going to be indoors for 6 weeks, that's going to need to be potted up. Okay, so let's talk about growing seedlings in these plastic cell packs. This is a 3x3, so 9, and you can get 8 of these into a tray. This is one you'll see very commonly. It's 2x3, so a 6-pack. 12 of those fit in a tray like this. And then these are some smaller individual ones, about 2 inches square. Now, the most important thing about these is don't just recycle them after one use. You can reuse these over and over and over again. I've had some of these for 6 or 7 years. This one, you can see it's kind of wiggly at the edge. That's because it got overheated one year and started to melt. But it's still perfectly okay. You know, the holes in the bottom haven't split open completely. What will happen occasionally is you'll get one of these and it splits down the side. And once it's split completely down the side, you know, the soil's going to fall out of that, so you can't use it anymore. Wash it, put it in the recycling. We can recycle them where I live. You may or may not be able to. So yeah, you can use them over and over and over again. It's very easy to fill these. I'm just going to use the 2x3s here. Just top them up nicely with your soil, and then just let them drop on the surface a few times just to firm the soil a bit. You don't want it squished down. That squashes all the air out of it, and the roots need air. So just firm it a little bit. And then you can either put seeds in it, you know, over here, and then put it in your tray, or you can put it in your tray and fill a whole tray full of soil before you put seeds in. If you're going to be planting a whole tray, there's a shortcut. What you do is put all your 6-packs in your tray to start with. There we go, 12 6-packs makes a tray, and then you take your container full of your soil and just tip it on the whole lot. So there you can see there's a nice big pile of soil there, got something growing in that. Just spread it out. Put some more on and spread it out completely so that all your cells in all your 6-packs are topped up. It's a bit messy because you almost invariably get some of it going over the edge, but that's okay. It's quicker than filling every cell individually. I'm just going to fill a few gaps along the edges there. There we go. Just flatten it all out. And then, again, you've got to do your firming. You take the whole tray and drop it. And that will show you if you've got any places where you've got like a big lump there or something. Who knows how that got there. One or two maybe that are a little bit empty and need a bit of topping up. There we go. So then you can just seed the whole lot. One thing that often trips me up that I try and remind everybody of is, it sounds really obvious, label things after you've seeded them, or even before you seed them. If I was to seed all this with different things and then come back to try and label it, yeah, I may have Swiss cheese for brains, but I can't remember what I planted in each one. So I make the labels first, have the label and the seeds, plant the seeds, put the label in immediately before I forget. Otherwise, chaos ensues, you know.